Let's drop the green flag on this episode of the Talent Tank Podcast with your host, Wyatt Pemberton, bringing you the best, fastest, most knowledgeable personalities in ULTRA4 and off-road racing.
This episode of the Talent Tank brought to you by three amazing partners: Custom Splice Off-Road Recovery Equipment, Brannick Motorsports Custom Machine, and Magnitude Performance, a massed motorsports company. Hey, this is Wyatt. Hey, before we get going, man, I got to just say thank you guys for everyone who continues to tune in every week, giving me and my guest in this show 2 hours of your life on a weekly basis is absolutely, man, it's so flattering. Yeah, that's kind of the only word I really have for it. I'm completely elated that, the thousands of you guys that have just continued to help this show grow, continue to spread the word. I love it. Here I am, hat in hand, pandering. Was going through the stats this week and really realized that of the thousands and thousands that tune in weekly for this show and listen to what we have to say, 58% of you guys listen across Apple Podcast. Apple Podcast has an amazing rating system. You just scroll to the bottom of the page, and there it is. You can leave 5 stars, and you can even type in a little review. Of that 58% of the thousands of listens, less than 1% have left reviews. Come on, guys. We're better than that. Come on, man. Those are rookie numbers. We need to pump them up. All right, guys. Hit pause. Hit the ratings at the bottom of the screen. All right? Enjoy. All right. We are back in the saddle again. The Talent Tank, another installment, little deep dive here. As you clicked on today's episode, we've got Disco Derek West, hailing out of Springfield, Missouri. Derek, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on, Wyatt.
Man, I've known you, since 2007-ish, XRA. I tried to think back to exact memory. I think the first time racing against you was at Grey Rock, Alabama, XRA, and I came to the realization you're the guy to beat. Like back then, like any chance, like if everyone would have their days that they were on top of the box or their game was on point, but you were always on point.
I mean, I think it was a lot of luck and determination and drive. Back then I was young, didn't have any money, and somehow managed to scrap some stuff together and kind of had something to prove, I think. And yeah, I did good. And I was very fortunate to have done all that stuff and done as well as I did. And it was good times.
And you've been at it for like 18 years. You've been a quintessential competitor in off-road racing you're coming up on 2 decades of it. That's nuts. I want to get into that. That is absolutely nuts though. That's a crazy bar that you've set.
Yeah, I've been doing it a long time, which is good and bad at both. But there's lots of other guys that were there before me. That I can remember watching Shannon. I think when I was probably in high school, looking in magazines of Pinky, and some of these other guys have been doing it forever, and some of them aren't doing it anymore. But yeah, it's been a long time, and it's fun. And I don't know how much longer I'll be able to do it, but I've enjoyed it. And some of the XRA days that you mentioned was that was probably the highlight of the fun era. When you go to a race and you show up and you're meeting new people, because we're all new. It wasn't like we'd been doing it for 10 years at that point. And so that was a lot of getting to know people over drinks and campfires. And
absolutely right. So I introduced you as Disco Derek West, but I do not know why you're called Disco. What's the deal?
It's a good question. So I believe it was Lauren Healy that actually coined the term when we were at a ULTRA4 race in Roush Creek, Pennsylvania. And and this is still back where we used to go out and do some stuff. I feel like we don't do a lot of this stuff anymore, but so there's a little pub around the corner from the park there, and we all go down there and having a good time. And so we were doing dancing, had the jukebox going, and we were goofing around. And I think Lance Clifford and I somehow got into a worm race, which he annihilated me at. He actually went up a set of stairs doing the worm. It was crazy. But anyway, so just goofing off and having a good time. And, Lauren's maybe a little more straight laced when it comes to cutting loose. And So anyway, so he coined that, and my wife didn't like it for the longest time, hated it, be calling that. And I was like, you know what, I kind of like it. And so I embraced it. I even had a disco ball for a while. And, it's always good to be known for something that's funny or, associated with fun. And so I didn't mind it.
Well, you can't give yourself your own nickname. That's kind of faux pas. I like it.
Yeah.
It says Lauren Healy nicknamed you Disco. All right. I can see that. I've seen you dance. You got some pretty damn good moves.
So yeah, that was probably back in the day. I'm old dad now, so I got the dad dance, I guess.
The dad bod dance. Hey,
yeah.
You're just being humble. So what's going on today? We've got some stay-at-home orders. We've still got some COVID going on. The country's kind of starting to open back up. Have you slowed down at all with your business? Have you slowed down with your day-to-day?
Yeah. So it, at first all hit and wasn't sure what was going to happen. Of course it kind of came in slow. In fact, I even went and did a race right there in the beginning, and things were starting to get a little weird and you're starting to think about germs on things. Like I remember on the way to the race, I went to a truck stop and that was the first time where it hit me. I'm going in and I'm paying with my credit card and I'm using it and I'm touching things and, thinking about all that. But anyway, so we went to that race and then after that we came back and things started shutting down. And, so I do solar energy is what I do for a living. Then the phone just stopped ringing. People stopped thinking about buying. Races started getting canceled. And yeah, so it definitely made me sit back and think, what's going to happen for the rest of the year. And I've got this time now. What do I do with this time? Or in limbo of not doing all the things that I'm accustomed to doing.
And you're a guy that doesn't sit around anyway. I know you're a pretty busybody type person. So is it killing you? You don't stir crazy?
No. So they started canceling races. So I was like, okay, so that's out for a while. So yes, I could go over and take a toothbrush and start going over my race car. Or then I was like, I need to figure out how to make a living, so I didn't know what all was going to happen with sponsorships and, potential winnings, all this stuff that, I normally have going on during a season. I don't know what's going to happen with that. I don't know if we're going to race the rest of the year, so, first everybody was going forward, thought they were going to have races and then it got held off. And I thought, this could go on all summer. But anyway, so I turned around and kind of focused on my work stuff and was brainstorming and kind of stepping out of my normal, trying to find business and dig up some business, calling other companies, seeing if they needed help with some of their work. So I had an installation crew I was trying to keep busy. So I spent all day kind of doing that for a while.
That'll happen. Are things starting to turn around a little bit or no?
Yeah. So during this process, I ended up laying off some of my workers. As I thought, well, that's the best thing for them. We can only clean the shop so much because I was working into it and then we finally caught up with our work. And you're probably familiar with this, but we've got some lead time. So I've got some work that's lined up and, I had about 3 weeks worth of stuff lined up. And once we ran out of that, it was either I was going to pay my guys to clean my shop and do things or, send them home, let them draw unemployment and with all the bonuses that were going on, they were going to come out pretty good. And so I had to talk with them and we weighed out the options and we all thought that was the best strategy. So I did that. And then during the process of basically turning over all these rocks, I started finding work, and then I have gone back trying to get my guys to come back, which proved to be a little difficult.
Right.
So one of my guys, actually, he went and found another job, which was, good on him. He could have been lazy and sat at home, and he just wasn't that type of person. He found something else. And then I had some other guys that didn't necessarily want to come back to work just yet. I think fear of, the virus, what's going on out there. There's a lot of talk of people getting bad sick and dying. And, so we discussed it some more, and we're not around people that much with what we do. So anyway, so I got some crew back, hired some new guys, and we're back into the swing of things, and I feel good moving forward. I still don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if the bad part of this economy's hit us yet or not, but so I've been back to work. I've been working on the race car. I hadn't even washed it from I did an Outlaw bouncer race, and so me and one of my guys got it washed and spare chassis, so we've been scrubbing on the chassis, getting it all cleaned up, and think I'm going to try to get it in shape and go out and riding around Memorial Day weekend and kind of test and tune on some things. And so hopefully life's getting back to normal. That
is outstanding that you've, not necessarily job creation, but you've been able to kind of retain jobs. I mean, certainly you had a little bit of turnover, a little swap out of human capital. That sucks, I'm sure, because those guys were trained. They were guys you could lean on. But, that's volatility in the market, right?
Yeah, no, and it was a good deal for both of us. He was driving an hour and a half to work, and it was a move that we both needed to make because distance was a problem. But like I said, I mean, it was great to see some people want to do something and not just sit at home and get a paycheck. So because he could have sat at home, collected unemployment, and made more than what he was making, and he didn't. So
outstanding.
I like to see that.
So I got 2 questions on moves, 2 separate moves, but they both come to your part of the world. First question, how do you feel about if this happens and goes forward, if we're back to it, the ULTRA4 Nationals gets relocated to Davis, Oklahoma? That's almost your backyard. I mean, a couple hours down the road. Was it 4-hour drive for you? 3 hour?
I'm going to call it 6, probably.
6? Is it that far? Oh, yeah.
Well, it's 4.5, I think, to Oklahoma City, and that always seems to take me 5, and it's probably an hour and a half from Oklahoma City south, so I'm going to call it 6 hours.
That's fair. But for an ULTRA4 race, that's almost your backyard at that point.
Yeah, it's super close. Absolutely. 6 hours is super close, for sure.
So that's a good deal, right? For you. You excited about that? And I think you've had some success at Davis in the past.
Yeah, so I'm super excited about it. I could care less about the distance. If this race was in Alaska, that's where I want to go. So Davis, Oklahoma is the best ULTRA4 course, in my opinion. I mean, it's great. It's kind of my jam.
That's awesome. I love that you are so excited about that. Like, I do think Davis is nice. I think it's, location. It's location of Wynnewood and the zoo there with Joe Exotics, that's awesome, right?
Yeah, I'm super upset that we didn't go visit that over the past times that we've been there. I looked it up and it's like 5 miles down the road.
No, I know, it's crazy how close it was, and I've not been, but it was funny hearing like Von Gittin had gone over there and had hung out there and seen it. I don't know if he ate the Walmart pizza or whatever it is they've got going, but that's I bet he really thought back about that. The second move question I had for you was, there's some online rumorage going around about a fella we all know by the name of Easy Rick Mooneyham considering a relocate from Lake Havasu City, Arizona to your neck of the woods.
That's what I hear. I hear he's stopping by to see me in like August.
Is that it?
So I think they're coming up to kind of look at it. So, which based off of his social media, I'd say that it's a good fit for him. And
did you know each other very well from like your days as like Nitto teammates?
Oh, a little bit. So I'm trying to think what all we've done. So I've hung around him a little bit when we vacationed in Havasu. We were going to a race, Glen Helen or something, stopped in and visited with him there. Hot Springs, he came out and gave me a ride in his car. We did a few hot laps up Horsepower Hill, and he's a pretty cool, good guy.
I do like Rick. It just seemed like way out of right field, but then at the same time, knowing him, everything's kind of out of right field. So
See, for me, it wasn't out of right field at all. To me, it made perfect sense.
Well, there you go.
So I follow a lot of stuff on social media, and I never say a word because I'm the type of person that writes out, this big long paragraph, and I go, no, and I delete it all back out. But I follow that out, and people can't understand why he's doing it. And based off of what I see him post on social media with his beliefs and everything, it's just and the business I'm in, I guess. So
yeah, spot on.
Yeah. So getting out away from things and producing some of your own things, I just, so I don't know if you saw where Rick had looks like he was building some sort of weekend getaway out in the country.
They had a little mountain house deal where they were, jackhammer rock to put in a basement. And I think they got the basement in like cinder block, like pretty awesome. I mean, it looked like a bunker. I mean, it looked like probably easier to do that in the Ozark mountains, right?
Yeah. So I don't know what happened there, but I assume he's wanting to do something similar out here. And there's people all over that have stuff like that around here.
Yeah. The Ozark mountains are I mean, gorgeous. Having grown up in Kansas, we would come down to, I remember going to Springfield all the time as a kid, where you live, your hometown. Been to Branson a lot. And then I remember going, annually, we go canoeing down a lot of the rivers there in southern Missouri. Some of them end up, like, is it the Wyatt that ends up going into Arkansas? I mean, with like Boy Scouts and all that. And it is, God, that part of the country is so gorgeous. It's just straight beautiful. You're blessed to live there. I mean, there's a lot of outdoorsy type of stuff to do. Canoeing, we've got a ton of rivers right here. And I didn't even realize it until I was somewhere else. And I was like, hey, let's go out canoeing. That'd be fun. And there just really wasn't, a lot of rivers like that to do. And, there's, I don't know, 10 rivers maybe that you go out and get on and have access to fish and canoe. And so there's a lot of outdoor stuff. And, a lot of it I don't think of much because I live here. It is a nice area and I do enjoy it. Well, we talked about a bunch of other stuff, but people are dialed in, that they turn this on. They want to listen to who Derek West is. Derek, you hail out of Springfield, Missouri. That's a pretty decent sized city in south central Missouri. You born and raised there. You live there now. Queen City of the Ozarks. I remember growing up like Bass Pro Shops. That was Bass Pro Shops headquarters. And I remember like their first big store, going there and just being a young kid, just, jaw hanging on the ground, how awesome that place was. But it's also the headquarters of like O'Reilly's. That's we all know O'Reilly's. Frequent member of frequent flyer program there at O'Reilly's if you're in the racing business. Good place to be?
It is. So, growing up, you always think you want to move somewhere else, and grass is always greener, right? So, with what we do for racing, I've traveled all over the country, been different places for, vacation. We go all around, and I really enjoy going to places. There's other beautiful parts of the country. I like going to big cities. They've got things to offer there that I don't have here. We're 250,000, size area here, but I always like coming back, and there's really nothing that would take me away from here except for the cold winter. I don't like the cold winter, and there's other places that are worse, but that's about it. But, also I feel without the winter, we've got, seasons here. So we've got a full 4 seasons of, spring, summer, fall, winter. And I think that's, what makes summertime so nice here is you go through a winter, if you've got, 4 months where it's terrible and you don't want to go outside, and then spring comes back around, and then you go out and you go to one of the rivers or, whatever it might be out in nature, get out and drive around and really enjoy it. It makes you appreciate it more.
So do your mom and dad still live there close, local, or?
Yeah. So my dad lives, probably 2 miles from me. I'm on the southwest side of town, and then my mother lives on the north side of town. So she's probably 30 minutes away. That's
not bad. They, and then you're married, and if anyone's been around ULTRA4 and has met you and been at races, odds are they've met your wife, Ashley. She keeps the train on the track, so to speak, right?
Oh yeah. And so there's this thing with racing, you either gotta, do really good and kick butt or look good being bad. And so I always tell my wife that, and this is, years ago. So I'd say, you always need to look good, and you stand around me or you stand around this car, because I may not do very good and they may not remember me, but they'll remember you. And so you associate with me and we're good.
And then y'all have a daughter, London?
Yep.
How old's London now?
She's 13.
So, and perfect with having your dad 2 miles away and your mom still, fairly close. They're pretty involved with grandparents?
Yeah. So, London is very involved with activities. So, not now, I guess, because of all the stuff going on, but otherwise she's, we were doing, before everything got shut down, we were doing travel volleyball, this is the first start of all this for me. So she's been doing some sports with school and some extracurricular stuff. But, the travel thing was, just about every weekend, and going to Kansas City and Wichita and Joplin, traveling around, staying the night and practices. Then we've got her in boot camp and private lessons. And, so she's staying pretty busy doing that. And then,
and does that tear you up? Like, this is what happens to me. My son is on baseball kind of on that level. and we will be at tournaments, and it is the selfish thoughts, but he's there. You have to be there to watch him. He's your son, or in this case, this is your daughter. You're in Wichita. You're watching her play volleyball. But in the back of your mind, you're going, man, I've got to get X, Y, and Z done at the shop, or X, Y, and Z done on my race car because I've got that next weekend. So you're like, you're doing this like cost benefit analysis of being there, being happy, but also knowing that you're like, well, for every day I'm here, that's another 2 hours later, I'm going to have to stay every night this week in the shop. That go through your head?
Oh, yeah. And so it's a balance. And so when the season first started for her, I missed quite a few games, to be honest. So, cause it was in King of the Hammers. So I was gone to Colorado to Jimmy's, building the car, brought it back here. So I'm spending 12, 15 hours a day. So I missed a few of her games. And I mean, I couldn't put in the extra time at that point.
And this isn't a new thing. And again, you've been racing for so many years. She's only known her father as Dad, the racer, right?
Right.
My dad's a race car driver.
Yeah. And so part of it I can justify, I guess, to myself is, I may miss some of this time with her now, but we're going to make it up later. So I mentioned that, here in Memorial Weekend, we're going to go out and do something. Well, we're going to take our motorhome that we have for racing, and then we're going to put a race car and a side-by-side in that trailer. And, she's going to get to go out and drive me around all weekend in the side-by-side. And, we'll spend a ton of time together, with toys that we have because of racing. So it kind of balances out that way.
Well, I think you're teaching her something, valuable, work hard, play hard, you work hard to get to this point to be able to enjoy life on this level and on these terms. And I know I've seen her running around in side by side. She's there's a lot of freedom in that, right? 13 years old, that cuts you loose. You're good, right?
Absolutely. She's got the, and I've dolled it up for her a little bit, so I've got the whip lights and Bluetooth stereo so she can put on her music, and I'm sure she feels pretty cool, going around rocking out. So
no, absolutely. So were you into sports when you were a kid like her, or?
Yes, I was, but not at the level that she is. And by that level, what I mean is
we didn't really have that level then, right? That level kind of didn't exist.
Probably not. No, probably not. Not like that. I mean, who could afford to do that? It's like, crazy the amount of money that we spend traveling around and fees and equipment. But there was, so whatever camps they had, we just didn't really know about it. So when I was little, we weren't in the right circle, I guess. And, so if there was a football camp or whatever, I wasn't at it. And so then when season came around, coaches were already familiar with kids who were at the camps, and I wasn't at the camp. And, so I don't know. I did track and football and soccer when I was real young. So but anyway, so I learned what I missed out on, and I saw how the coaches looked at those kids. And, so I talked with actually my wife and said, okay, find out what camps are going on, where these kids need to be, where they're going to be with the coaches. And I talked to my daughter, make sure you talk to the coach. And, it's not always about talent. Even what I do, it's not about talent, getting sponsors and all that sort of thing. It's being at the right place, the right time, and, making a name for yourself, being remembered, whatever it may be. And so I try to teach that to her. And so that's why we've got her involved in all this stuff. And she may like it, she may not. I don't know. We had her in piano because that was one of the other things as a kid that I wish my parents would have made me do some sort of musical instruments. I think now it'd be super cool. And I've thought that for a long time. So we had her doing piano for the longest time, and then she just didn't want to do it, and I didn't force her to do it.
But she got to experience it for a while, right? It's all about the experience. No, I think you're doing the right thing from a parent standpoint. I think you're doing exactly what so many try to accomplish. As a parent, you try to tilt the playing field as far in your child's favor as possible, right? You're trying to, nothing's fair out there. Nothing's level. There's no levelization unless you're playing like that. Was it the fair, free play soccer where everybody gets a trophy? That's not the real world. So you're trying to give them always that leg up. And if it's that extra one-on-one coaching time, if that's that extra camp, if it's that extra face time in front of the coaches, you're just always trying to get them that. I don't know another way to do it, right? I think you're doing it right.
Yeah, it's it's a learning experience. I don't know what I'm doing, so a lot of what I do in life is based off of my experience when I was a child, or what I did wrong or didn't do. And I try to make sure that doesn't happen with my daughter.
So Crush Motorsports, that's your race team. Ashley, I love pumping her up for this. She basically runs that thing for you, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. You spin the wrenches. You're the pretty face with the helmet on. She runs everything else. That's how it worked in my house anyway. That's for sure.
Yep.
How did you come up with that name, Crush Motorsports?
So I almost have to go back to the beginning here. So I had a Jeep, and it was the Jeep that I first started racing. It wasn't my first Jeep. It was actually my third. It was the Jeep that Ashley was driving to school. She was going to college at what is now Missouri State University. It was SMSU then, but so she was daily driving that. And I took it down to a race in Hot Springs, Arkansas. And so we would actually drive it down there. So what am I? I guess I'm 23 maybe at this point, 22 or 23. And so I had a buddy that had a truck and a trailer. So he's a little older than I am. And I didn't have any money. This is just a Jeep. I've been building Jeeps since I was 15 years old. So by the time I'm 23, I've kind of got some stuff fixed up and bought and sold and traded for some stuff. But I had it fixed up pretty nice. So we went down to Hot Springs and I raced it, and I hit it on the rocker real hard. In fact, I think that obstacle is called Rocker Knocker, I believe, or Rocker. I think maybe it is Rocker Knocker. But anyway, it hit on the rocker so hard that I couldn't close the door. And also the transfer case was slipping, so I was having to hold the in gear, and I had to drive it home that way. So Hot Springs is about 5.5 hours. So I had a set of tires that my buddy would haul on his trailer, and I'd switch the street tires out and put on some comp tires and go do that. But anyway, so on the way home, she said, "That's it. We're getting me another car." So anyway, so I had it all beat up. So I ended up repainting it. So Ashley's dad is a painter, so he fixes autos is what he does. And so we painted it, and I'm trying to remember how I even came up with this color. But anyway, so the color that I came up with was called Orange Crush. So my Jeep, we named that Jeep Crush. And it was basically named off the color, or whatever. I guess I was young. I thought, people have a crush on the Jeep or me, or who knows what I was thinking back then. But so anyway, so that name kind of stuck. And I always, for whatever reason, like to name things something, a business name, and not use my name. And so I went with Crush Motorsports with Ashley. Ashley's hated that from day one. So now, I don't know, you can see my shirt. So now she's branding me very hard with Derek West Racing.
Yeah, Derek West Racing, number 20.
Yeah, but that's Crush Motorsports. So that's where that came about.
And I probably missed that in the complete intro of introducing you, and I apologize for that right now. But yeah, Derek is the 4400 driver, number 20. Jimmy's 4x4 Racing. Yeah, number 20.
And I've got some stories about my number that could clear up some things probably.
Let's get there right after a couple of things here in the middle, as we'll cover that when we talk racing. Let's talk work for a second. You mentioned earlier you're in the solar. As we talked about what's going on with COVID and employees and work and all that, it's very clear you're entrepreneur. You own your own business today. Solar Energy Services. You guys do rooftop solars. Residential. Do you guys do some commercial?
We do.
Okay. I remember when you started this and thinking, wow, that's cool. He's kind of ahead of the game. I wonder how big that market is. And obviously it's blown up since then. So is that 3-4 years old now? 5 years?
So I've been in the solar business for 13 years, I believe. But I've had my own company for 6 or 7 now.
Okay.
So yeah, so solar let me back up. So 13 years ago when I got into solar, which was with my stepfather, who'd been doing it for 20, it was a little out there. People didn't know about it. And does that really work? And So it was a whole different feel than what it is now. And of course, we're here in the Ozarks. So this is why I was saying I can relate to Rick Mooneyham with what he wants to do. So we do a whole lot of preparedness, bunker type of places. People live off grid, have their own power, make their own food, very self-sustaining. So I've got a lot of experience with that, because back then, that's what you did with solar. They have what's called grid tied or net metering, where you have solar panels that go to an inverter, and then you use the utility grid to store your energy. So you don't even have batteries. When I first started doing solar, you couldn't do that legally in the state of Missouri. So I learned, a person would have to have batteries to store their energy. So I learned on doing that. And that type of clientele was generally a survivalist or preparer, so this is, my stepfather went through the Y2K area where everybody thought that everything was going to crash because, the computers were going to die or whatever. Then we had some ice storms here in 2008, which is, or 2007. So I started doing this just slightly after that. Learned everything, installation, pricing systems and sales. And since I was a little kid, I thought I would be my boss. I thought I'd be my own boss, and the time had came. So finally the opportunity was here, and I was in a place where I could do it. And I had Ashley, my wife, who knew how to do all the bookkeeping side of things and keep that straight, and I could focus on the business of kind of the nuts and bolts of things. And we've been doing it ever since, and that's still what we're doing. And we've got a great partnership together doing it. And, I think we appreciate each other more, because we lean on each other and we rely on each other. And I think it's been a good thing for us.
And I think you guys are on the right side of it. I think rooftop solar is the future for residential. I think solar in general, I'm in the power business myself, from electricity power production, managed a fleet of gas fireds, a fleet of geothermals. And then at the end of my career doing that, there was a lot of wind farms came on, some solar farms that we managed output for. But we saw the penetration of rooftop solar into the daily grid. And with, like you said, net metering, I think, is the most genius thing for residential and commercial that could have ever happened. Before that, the utilities were against it. They didn't want the rooftop guy, the local guy, your survivalist or sustainability guy, just willy-nilly pushing electrons out to the grid off of their rooftop unit. Now the times have changed, with zero carbon footprint. Now you have the ability to, if you have your own rooftop solar, you get a net meter. And I guess I'll let you do it. Describe net metering.
So net metering is the process where you would have an agreement between you and your utility provider. So at that point, you become your own individual power station. And so, I guess what rooftop solar looks like is you've got a neighborhood, and let's say you've got maybe 10 houses. So those 10 houses on a nice sunny day are providing the power for their house, and then they're sending their excess electricity backwards through the meter into the grid system, which then is getting used by other houses instantaneously. But then you build credits into the meter. And so now you're able to, it's in a sense, store your energy out there in the grid. And then so at night when the sun is down, you now pull energy from the grid, which at that time instantaneously is coming from, whatever your power source is, the coal plant or hydro or whatever. And your goal is to try to net out or, have a zero bill. So you're trying to produce your own energy.
For you guys in Missouri, can it ever go positive where you could actually produce more than you consume in a month and get paid for it? Or is the best you can do zero?
So no, you can get a credit. And I won't get too depth of how it works because it gets a little confusing. But, basically, if you produce more than what you use, you're going to get a credit. And you can carry that over to the next month. That's in Missouri. Every state is different. So it's a state by state law. Some states have where you can, maybe when you produce more than what you use, you're getting paid a certain rate, but not in Missouri. So here in Missouri, so what I do is I take a person's utility usage and I break it down monthly. So I look at it for 12 months of the year, and then I design a solar power system, on their roof. So I actually have a software program where I go through satellite imagery and I design something on the roof, and it takes into account the angle and where it's at and how it's pointing and all these factors. And I try to design something that closely matches what a person's usage was for the previous 12 months. So then we're trying to get as close to we can as netting out, but generally on average, I'm about a 70 to 80% of their overall electrical usage is what I'm shooting for.
But that's amazing in and of itself, right? That's a massive reduction.
Yeah, it is. There's warranties, so you can do, what I'm offering now is 25-year warranties on all the products. So it's a long-term investment, and so I've came up with these warranties to put in place to protect people, because, when you have your own power system, you're kind of on the hook for maintaining it.
So you get some long-term service agreements with these guys?
So it's done through the manufacturers.
Okay.
Up front, I buy a extended warranty, for the electronics, for the inverters. I'm a certified partner with my solar panels, so I'm able to offer 25-year warranty with them. And, depending on what electric rates do and which utility company they're with, it's anywhere from a 7 to 15-year payback on a system that you're going to have for 25 years because that's what it's warranted for.
But you also, from a business standpoint, you're the guy who's going to get the call when there's something wrong with it, even outside of, you're going to get the service call, right? You're the one who's going to go do the repairs. So there's service work available with this business, right?
Correct.
That's awesome.
Stay tuned. Your talent tank is in full get.
For the past 10 years, there has been a group of individuals working hard, pushing the limits of what's possible with suspension spring technology. Today, that group has opened some exciting new doors, stepping out with the release of their own line of premium high-performance coil-over springs. Magnitude Performance Suspension is now up and running at their new complex deep in the heart of Texas, manufacturing their new line of premium chrome silicone springs right here in the USA. While the name and location is new, the crew at Magnitude is anything but, with extensive multi-genre racing application experience, including 10 plus years specifically testing, tuning, listening to, working with, and answering the needs of Ultra-4 and off-road racers alike. I'm ecstatic to have Magnitude on board as a partner of the Talent Tank, and I stand behind their products as I'm a customer of this team myself. When I was building my last race car, I reached out to now president of Magnitude, Jason Yode, about his sway bar design. He built a sway bar to the specs he calculated for my application, and it was 100% dialed in right out of the box. That almost doesn't sound real, but it happened. Proof this team at Magnitude knows suspensions, springs, sway bars, what works, what doesn't. And I haven't even mentioned their line of valve train springs. They do those as well. LS, LT, diesels, drag racing, duals, and triples, they've got them all. No more waiting around for springs to be made, back ordered. All the while, you could be testing and tuning your vehicle and practicing your best podium pose. Magnitude has over 10,000 springs in stock. That's over 225 different lengths and rates. These guys have embraced technology with real-time inventory status on their website, so enthusiasts and competitors can order with confidence that Magnitude has the parts you need when you need them. I know I mentioned that they are in Texas. That makes me proud, but that also means they are centrally located for quick shipping to your door. No more right coast waiting on California or left coast waiting on North Carolina. Give the team at Magnitude a call at 866-674-1516 or hit up their website, magnitudeperformance.com. Mention you are a fan of the Talent Tank or use online code TT10 and get a special 10% discount.
Now, back to the show.
So I saw some stuff about, and this is what I know about you from the racing world and your ability to take what you're working on and make it better. Like you're not a race car builder. Your cars come from Jimmy's 4x4, but you've always refined them to be better and more efficient and fitting you for what you see working for you. And so I saw you doing that with your solar installs. You've adjusted them and you've ran the wiring a certain way, and you've and it was something I'd never thought about, was just the cabling that comes off the back of the photovoltaic cell. Did I sound that right? I don't know.
Yeah, photovoltaic.
Yeah, there you go. The cabling that came off, you made a point, and it was something I would have never thought of, that most installers, maybe they just lay that cabling. It just lays there on the roof underneath the panels and you kind of never see it. But you're right. You get snow or ice or leaves. Next thing you know, that stuff is creating something of a dam on the roof and catching stuff. And you have the video I saw, you had created a little system to clip that up so it follows it's just clean wiring. We've all seen like the backside of like the Campbell's race dashes and how beautifully they're wired. This is the same similar instance. You were doing it to the PV cells. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah. And so that's a perfect analogy, because that's what I think about is, I want my work of what I do to be looked at in that light, which, just like the Campbells, because so back when I first started in this in 2008, so we were one of 2 or 3 solar companies around in the state. There just wasn't hardly anybody. Now there is 30 solar companies within 15 miles of me. And they all slap stuff up. They're in a hurry. And that's just a big pet peeve of mine, is to do it right the first time and be proud of what you're doing. This is all stuff I've learned from racing. And it's because with racing, especially as we got into endurance, my stuff started getting cleaned up. When you built a car to do rock crawling or XRA, you could have problems because all you had to do was go for a few minutes at a time, and then you had a break and you could fix something. Well, with endurance racing, you can't. Whatever you start with is what you end with, or otherwise it kills you somewhere in the middle. So I learned that things need to be done right, and they need to be perfect. And so that absolutely followed into my work ethic of just making things right, because that's how it should be. And if you want it to last, it has to be.
Yeah, it's your racing program has taken your quality control through the roof. That's obvious.
Yeah, because I'll have to say, is growing up, I was not the OCD, it's got to be perfect, just right person. And so I have learned that and developed that trait specifically, through racing. Now,
as we've seen racing evolve, I specifically say ULTRA4 Racing, off-road racing, all the way back to, Cowrocks, Mo-Rock, XRA. We'll talk about those guys here in a little bit in that era. But going from there to where we are at today in 4400, we've seen technology advance leaps and bounds like no other. But we've also seen that those technology advances happen in solar, correct? Has the technology in the panels that you were installing 13 years ago gotten immensely better over that time frame? I can read about it, but here I've got you here, literally the horse's mouth. You can talk to us directly about what you've seen as basically a solar subject matter expert. I didn't realize I was going to get that out of you, but I'm so curious right now.
So solar panels, I'm going to say no. There has not been quantum leaps. So have they gotten better? Yes. So solar panels are rated in efficiency. So a solar panel, an average solar panel is roughly 40 inches wide and 66 inches long. So when I first began doing this, we were around 200 watts on that size of a panel. Today, I'm installing 315 watts in the same physical size. So, yes, it's a third better, and that's came incrementally, though. So it was 200 watts. And then a few months later, it was a 205 and a 210 and a 215. And what it has to do with is there's silicon wafers in the solar panels, and it has to do with how thin they can get those. And so the technology keeps getting them thinner and thinner and thinner, which boosts the efficiency. So that's just been a slow, gradual thing. The electronic side of things is where I feel like there's been more of advance, of how they harvest power from the solar panels, ease of how to what's called string solar panels together. So generally when you have a solar panel system, you've got to hook them together somehow. And so you'd put, let's just say 10 of them together in a series, which would give you, 400 volts or something. And so the inverter technology has allowed that to be much more flexible, which is easier on designers, which trickles all the way down to the customer. So the electronic side of things is where I feel the biggest jump in technology has been.
So are those panels, the same panels you're putting on residential rooftops, are those kind of the same panels that we see out in solar farm fields? Or is there a big difference between what you see out there and what you see with what you're doing?
So the solar panels that I'm doing today, I would say are probably very similar technology to the first one that was made, which I think was like 1954, which is in the Smithsonian. So they look different, but it's the same thing happening. It's the same process. So yes, it's the same thing at a solar field. The only difference of a solar field is they may have some sort of racking system that moves or rotates.
Oh, and follows the sun, kind of like a sunflower.
Yeah, but other than that, it's there is no, all the technology that I'm aware of is all the same. So you've got the light strikes the solar panels, which excites the electrons. They start moving around inside there, which creates energy.
Well, I hope everybody listening picks up something they didn't expect to get out of this conversation today. I always try to bring more than just the racing game, and you just added a whole bunch of value to me, as you just told me a bunch about solar that I had kind of really not a lot of information on it.
Yeah, and so the solar panels themselves is what I know the least about, probably. I don't make solar panels, so I buy them. I don't know a whole lot about, equipment and as far as how the process actually works. I know a little bit about it, so my specialty is designing and putting everything together, and making it all work, making a system out of the parts and pieces that are available.
Well, in speccing, right, you have the capability to come in and you're not over speccing somebody, getting them to spend a whole bunch of money they didn't need to, but then you're also not under speccing them, and where it would be an anemic system where they just wouldn't see the gains that they could be capable of seeing, right?
Right. Yeah. And then so along the way, I guess it's been a year ago or so, I got my master's electrical license, so I've learned a lot and studied a lot, and, it is an evolving industry and it's changing all the time, but it's fun. I like it and I enjoy what I do.
Well, congratulations on your master's. Hopefully, there's not a bunch of ULTRA4 guys that start calling you going, hey, can you fly out here to Nevada and put in my solar? Because they trust you, love you, know you. But at the same time, that'd also be pretty cool if you end up putting your guys to work on a traveling team, right?
Yeah. No, and you'd be surprised. I get quite a few messages of people asking, different things, and I'm all about helping people. So no problems there.
Well, let's talk off-road and racing here. Let's kind of get into this. Thank you everyone for listening to that. I hopefully glean some nuggets on that and it helps somebody in their future renewables. Even if it's 10 years from now, you think back and you're like, I listened to a podcast way back in 2020 about a guy talking about some rooftop solar. Let me dig that back up. That scratched an itch for me. 15 years old, Derek West, your dad, he trades for a Jeep. You said it was quite a piece of shit. Big old POS, but you started learning how to wrench on it. Your dad loved it. Is that about where the start was? Did the hook really get set there, or did the hook get set later in life about off-roading, being outside, wrenching, being able to do what you do today as far as your race ops go? Yeah,
so my dad worked a deal for this Jeep, which I think had a trade value of $800. It was a 76 CJ5, and I'm not for sure if he was doing it for me or for him. My dad grew up with lots of Jeeps, so he had Willys and Renegades, and the Screaming Eagle one, Eagle on the hood, and some pretty neat stuff as far as what he had for vehicles. And found this old CJ5 that was rusted out and sitting, and so we traded on it, and I had no aspirations to off road or do anything, or didn't know what I was doing, and we had it, and it needed work, and so we started on it.
And then, did you work on it with your dad? Does he teach you how to wrench? So many guys don't end up having someone that teaches them how to wrench. They learn from somebody.
Yeah, so I had learned quite a bit from my dad, doing brakes and different things. I mean, he always had me working and doing things, which at the time I thought was horrible as a kid, having to do some of the work that he's having me do. But now I look back and, he was teaching me things. So first off, it went to the body shop. So he wasn't a painter or wasn't a body guy, and had quite a bit of rust. The floorboards were rusted out, so took it down to a body guy, and he had it for quite a while. But then he struck a deal with a guy that specialized in Jeeps. This was in a town that's 20 minutes or so from Springfield. Basically, it needed some repairs and some different things. And of course, my dad's all about fixing something up, making it better and rodding it. He was an old Corvette racer, so he was a drag racer. And he was pretty good, won some state championships in the class he was in. And
there it is. There's the racing, like the racing was in your blood.
Well, and it is, so yeah, in fact, I need to go dig out his trophies. He's got a bunch of trophies and won quite a bit of stuff. And I've always looked at that. It's like, well, my dad was into racing. I was into racing because I don't know how what gave me the drive to do this. I didn't grow up with my dad racing. He'd done it before I was around. But anyway, so he struck a deal with the guy to work on the Jeep. But as part of the deal, I had to go down there and he had to teach me how to do that. So that's where I learned how to pack bearings and just lots of different things that I had never done before.
So there probably wasn't a discount. Your dad probably had to pay double.
Probably so. So, but no, that was at John's 4x4 and More. It was John Lloyd. And he was pretty patient. He was, he ended up being a good, really lifelong friend and my first sponsor, once I did get into racing. But that's where it all started. He was teaching me how to do this. And I guess once I started, I wanted more. And next thing you know, we're swapping axles and transmissions and motors and putting ARB lockers in and lifts. And
so you were pretty into trail riding by that point then, right? A couple Jeep clubs.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think of the timeline, how that all went down. So I had a 76 CJ5 that had a paint job lift kit with 33-inch tires, the 304 V8, which it did not come with. It had a 258. We'd swap that in and put a 4-speed transmission in it, and so that it was a pretty good little pavement pounder. So me and my buddies would cruise around town in it, and back then there wasn't a lot of Jeeps cruising around like there are today. Today there is a Jeep everywhere.
How long was the rear drive shaft on that thing? 10 inches?
Oh yeah, it was. That was something else I'd learned because you had to get the CV drive shaft because the
33s and it'd be almost vertical. It's an elevator.
Yeah. So a few power shifts and threw that thing out of there. It had a little axle wrap, and so they just always. So then you learn, you figure out how to adapt and make that hold up, and that was fun. Cruised around town, and we got to where we were going down to the lake. So there's lots of lakes around me. We'd go down there and go camping and trail ride around down there. And then of course I was trail riding with John Lloyd, and they were doing real off-roading. They weren't just trail roading, they were going to obstacles, and they knew where the obstacles were. And so that's what started getting me more and more into it. And so by the time I got into the Jeep club, I had actually got rid of that Jeep, which by the time I'd got rid of it, it had, or right before, I guess I should say, I had Dana 44 axles that were sprung over out of a Scout, so they were wider. But I bought a 93 Wrangler because my big holdback with my 76 CJ5 was that carburetor. And as soon as you start doing something hard, that thing
cut out,
get some gas in there. And so I got a 93 Wrangler just for the fuel injection. Longer wheelbase didn't hurt either, I guess. And I swapped the axles. I took the axles out of that CJ5 and put them underneath the Wrangler. Now that I think about it, I don't remember what I put under the CJ5. I guess I got some stock axles, or maybe I put those Wrangler ones. I don't even know. But so I did all this in my driveway of a house, which, I'm sure the neighbors appreciated that.
We've all been there. We've all done it, right?
And then, so I got involved with a Jeep club, and the Jeep club kind of formed because Jeep was having Camp Jeep in Branson. And so basically they needed somebody to make all these trails and then guide the trails. And so we had this Jeep club that kind of formed over that, and a bunch of us got a pretty tight bond because we were out working every day, cutting trails. And then we were the trail leaders for Camp Jeep and were involved with that. And, that was a fun experience.
And then somewhere in there, those guys, a couple of them did a comp somewhere, or they went to a comp and they came back and they told you, they're like, dude, you could have won this, or you could have done really well. And you're like, well, what is it?
Yeah. And so I guess I kind of had a competitive nature or a drive to do things that other guys couldn't. So when we would go out on a club trail run, there'd be a hard obstacle and some guys would go around it or whatever. Well, I was determined I was going to make this and I was going to make it the easiest. And, so I kind of had that reputation. And so it was actually my co-driver, Richie Keller, and his brother, Kyle Keller, who I still associate with quite often. In fact, I talked to Kyle today, and this is, 20 years ago.
Man, I love Richie Keller. That guy is awesome. I even think I texted you or something about, or it was on the list to talk about, was I miss that guy. That guy was kind of a party animal, but also just kind of cool, mellow, like things wouldn't get out of hand with Richie around. Yep. He'd laugh.
Yeah, no, he liked to have a good time. He's a great guy. And yeah, so we've done a ton of stuff together, but so Richie and his brother were down at this event. And I think the event they were at was at Bird's Adventure Center in Cass, Arkansas. They had a race. It may have been a mudstock race. I'm not for sure. But anyway, there's some sort of obstacle and none of the guys could even make it. And so they came back and told me this. And at the time I was racing ATVs. So I had a Honda 400EX and had some buddies I got into that with and was racing. But in the back of my mind, I was like, man, I see these guys wreck on the first corner all the time. I was like, as soon as I'm going to wreck, I'm going to break my arm and break my leg. And, like I was telling you, I don't have any money. So as soon as that happens, now I can't work. And, I bought a house, so I own a house. And I'm going to go bankrupt. This is ridiculous. And so I was like, yeah, mate, what they're saying, yeah, maybe I could do that. I could, have a roll cage and seat belts and, just it's a lot safer. That's what I thought.
With age comes the cage, right?
Right. So I kind of started working towards that goal. And so my Jeep I'd been wheeling just had the factory cage. It didn't have a full roll cage. So I bought a kit that was, was it EOR or somebody made this kit. It was, you buy the kit and weld it in. So I got that and, they had rules for where I was going to race. So I had to get all the stuff to meet the rules. And so I did that, went out and raced and won my first race.
That's awesome.
And that was my first taste of it. And I was like, man, it's like that trail riding, that's for the birds. I was like, this going fast and, it's just letting it all out. And, it's just, it was just a different sensation and I was hooked.
So here we are 18 years later. Yeah. I'm going to actually probably flip this portion of the interview backwards. I think, the right way to go about this is to really talk about what all you've done and accomplished and all that and go through that. And we're going to do that. But I want to ask you a question up front versus ask you a question at the end. You've been a competitor for 18 years. Your name is always in the conversation. Even back in the XRA days when I first got into off-road racing, you were the guy. Like in the East Coast, if you ended up in a chance to be ahead of Derek West in some form or fashion, you knew that Derek had a bad day. That was it. Like you weren't going to straight up beat him typically. It was, he'd had a bad day on some level. That was how you were going to be. That's how we were going to get ahead of you. That's how I remember it anyway. So how do you do it? How have you continue? And I've asked Chris May the same conversation, the same question, because he's been able to stay involved and competitive for so many years, just day in, day out, race in, race out, month after month after year. Is there ever burnout? Are you cyclical? How do you do it? What is the Derek West secret sauce on continuing to prep your car, load it in the box and go race?
Yeah, man, that's tough. So in the beginning, I was younger, I was new at it, had a lot to prove maybe. And so I had a ton of drive and, I wanted to succeed. And of course, in the beginning, Richie and I are traveling around and, so we're traveling all over the country. And, like I keep saying, I didn't have any money. So I tell Richie, I was like, hey, if we don't win this next race, we can't afford to go to the other one. So I mean, there's that drive, so there's drive A, I want to win. And then there's B, there's the drive that if we don't win, we're done. We can't, the entry fees weren't always cheap, so for a young guy trying to maintain a race car, and, it's just a stock modified Jeep at that point in the beginning. But, even as I got into the pro modified, it was, so me, Richie, and Kyle built my first pro modified that I was racing at XRA. So I did it all on the cheap in John Lloyd's shop at John's 4x4 because he wanted to help me. So I built this car ridiculously cheap, and I never even wanted to go in that class because I was scared of the cost of everything, scared of the cost of ownership of the buggy, scared of could I even do good? That fueled the drive.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, it's just where you harness it. Everyone harnesses motivation differently, and they pull on motivation from different places. I think it's kind of I'm going to say it this way, like when you are racing, are you the hare or are you the hound? Or do you like being chased or do you like being and so when it comes to like motivation, we draw motivation from different ways and different places and different, just all over. And yours is yours was, well, I wouldn't be able to do it again if I didn't do good this time. So that's my motivation, do good now. Then I can have a shot at it again. I get another cut at it. Yeah.
And so, in the beginning, I had so much drive and, for so many different reasons. And, I'd go out and do something completely unrelated to racing, and I would get inspired. And, I'd see somebody do good at whatever they do. Maybe it's a musician or whatever. And I was like, man, that dude is really good at what they do. That makes me want to be good at what I do. And so 18 years, 19 years later, whatever, it's difficult to keep that drive, so you're doing the same. You got to prep this car and you got to clean it and scrub the bare chassis and all the stuff that's associated with it. And, now you got to do these press releases and make sure you don't forget any of your sponsors. And, there's just all this stuff that goes along with this.
It makes it not fun, right? It sucks the fun out of it to an extent.
I'm not going to say it's not fun. I guess maybe it's difficult. It becomes work, so now I took this thing that I loved and I turned it into a job.
Stay tuned. Your talent tank is in full get.
Since 2007, Custom Splice has been the go-to supplier for tactical on- and off-road vehicle recovery equipment. Custom Splice owner Todd Stauffer saw a market where demands for absolutely the safest solutions to vehicle recovery were not being met. Since then, Custom Splice has taken on numerous safety and recovery projects, solving deficiencies in recovery gear for individuals and companies worldwide. What started with synthetic ropes has led to Custom Splice's expansive inventory of not just ropes in countless colors and diameters, but an expansive product line of hooks, fairleads, specialty thimbles, chafe guards, to name a few. Plus the fabrication of Custom Splice's newest addition, recovery rings. Not to be forgotten, don't miss grabbing some Custom Splice soft shackles with your next order, which are also available in many sizes and colors. Even though Custom Splice is a small business in America's heartland of Kansas, you can find Custom Splice employees shipping their products globally on a daily basis. Let's support this small business that supports our community and the talent tank. Give Todd and his crew at Custom Splice a call at 785-856-1844 or go to the web at customsplice.com before you get stuck without a Custom Splice solution.
Now, back to the show.
So one of your questions, kind of your probes going into this, who's someone that motivates you? And I left it blank. And I thought about that afterwards. And I was like, man, if I lost my drive, my motivation that bad that, I don't even know what to put here. And so I've been thinking about it. So have you been watching the Michael Jordan?
I have not.
Documentary?
I've been told to watch it. It is certainly queued up. Has not happened.
And I've been thinking about this because I didn't answer your question. And I've watched this man, Michael Jordan, go ups and downs, but the determination and the drive that he has, is unreal, I guess. And, so again, and now I've watched him do that. And so that kind of inspires me. And I think, so here I am, an old, washed up racer, and, but I'm going to find some stuff to get some drive and do better. I'm excited this year. I've got a new car. So, every time I get out and race, I love it. And, that's some drive. So the problem is because the real work's in the shop. So how do I keep myself motivated in the shop to keep the car prepped and things moving along? And, if I want to continue racing, I need to be making sponsor phone calls. And, if I just sit on my hands and don't do that stuff, then, I'm not getting anywhere. I'm not advancing, and, I'm through. So I've been thinking about that. So you've kind of sparked some inspiration in me to think about different things. And, as I figured I've kind of fallen off a little bit on my drive and my motivation of like what I used to have. And
well, no, I don't know if you've fallen off. I'm going to lay this on you. It's cyclical, right? You're going to have some low moments and high moments. You're going to be an overachiever, sometimes an underachiever, and at the end it equals out that you still be able to compete. I will tell you that the 2008, 2009 Derek, I remember racing at Hannibal, Missouri, XRA event, and there was this huge cliff drop-off that Weavers had put in the course. It was truly, if you do this, it's certainly going to make you faster. You're going to definitely finish the course faster. But it was like, I'm going to say it was a 20-foot drop. And I don't know, maybe you were the third set of cars to go. It was pretty early in it. And you shot off of that drop, like a 20-foot drop. And all of us in line were just like, well, we're going off the drop. There wasn't a question then. It was like nobody wanted to do it, but then you did it. And it was like, well, I have to do that now. Like there's just no, and I actually have it's not on my wall anymore. Is it? It might be on the wall at my shop, but some photog there caught me coming off of that and basically landing on the nose, and then your full wide open throttle trying to drive out from underneath the roll because the rear is trying to pass you on the top and you're trying to drive out from underneath it with the front. You set the bar in that competition by going off of that thing, and everyone was like, there was F-bombs dropped with your name on them, but that was the motivation. You set that bar. And I think today, you're going to find those things that set that bar for you. Maybe it's Michael Jordan. I don't know, but I see right now people look at you and you're setting the bar really high. You might not recognize or realize that you are the one setting the bar for so many people, and you're motivating them. So when you can turn around and look at that, it's got to make you feel pretty good, right?
Yeah. So we did some incredible things back then. Somehow I managed to put together a buggy and still drove it like I didn't care. I didn't care what I had invested. I wasn't thinking about, scratching the paint, doing anything. It was all about winning and doing good. And, that changes a little bit. I feel like for me, maybe I'm just older, but, the cars get way more expensive, and now I'm worried about tearing stuff up and having to fix it. I think that's the problem is I know I have to fix it. I think I've tore stuff up enough times that I've had to fix it. So, because there's another time at Hannibal at a We Rock event, there was this huge, crazy drop off. And I thought, I don't even think I can make this, but I'm going to try. And I tore up so much stuff. You got to cut the tubing out and patch stuff in. And, part of that I think hurts my drive to do things anymore is, I guess I was young and dumb. And
well, as you get older, you certainly do temper your actions with wisdom.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that was, I don't know. That was a good time for me. The first XRA race that I went to, I won. And I thought I was crazy because I didn't know what to expect. I was going out there racing. I'd been racing in the stock modified class for 4 years or, 5 years, whatever it was. And jumped up the class and, I thought, all these guys are going to, they're going to be so good and they're going to, beat me or whatever. But, it's just same people, just different equipment. So,
right. Yeah. I mean, you've been involved since the beginning. Again, I'm going to reiterate this, the 18 years of competitive off-road racing. You were there for Cal Rocks. I had not read the word Mo-Rock in a very, very, very long time. That brought back some flashbacks. Mo-Rock, We Rock, then XRA. We're familiar with all these Dirt Riot, Big Rich's deal. which that's sad to see Dirt Right go away. You know, that some grassroots ULTRA4 racing in my book. I thought it was good for the system anyway. Then of course ULTRA4, and you're 4,400 driver there and have been since the beginning. And then lately you've been doing Outlaw off-road, and that's effectively so it's kind of like XRA, right? But rock bouncing, it's courses, uphills. It's a lot shorter drives.
It's really pretty close to XRA.
Yeah,
they're even two courses side by side.
But mud, though, it seems like every time I see something with you from Outlaw, you've either won it or you're on the podium, but y'all are covered in mud. Do you love mud?
It rains here.
Yeah, always.
So it's there's no mud. It's just, well, so I've got my cut tires on, so they are flat slinging it. And, they'll generally run us across a small creek or something, it seems like, but there's no, it's just wet.
It just is what it is.
There's been dry ones too.
Yeah. So Jimmy's, when I first came to know who Derek West was, you had a Jimmy's buggy, and you've always had a Jimmy's car. Back in those early days, how did you end up in a Jimmy's car? How did you end up talking to Randy Rod, developing a relationship with that guy? I mean, even today, I know you guys vacation together, go skiing together and whatnot. What was the point way back then in the mid 2000s that you ended up in a Jimmy's car to begin with? And then about that relationship developing all the way through today?
So I was doing We Rock stock modified with my Jeep, same Jeep, the orange Crush Jeep. And, said it was on revision 10 or whatever. And I just felt like the class was going nowhere. So I liked the class, and I thought, this is the stock modifieds, the driver's class, should be the manufacturer's class, but nobody's paying any attention. So, and back then the pro modified was the main class. Basically, I just got frustrated enough that I was ready to jump a class, which scared me because financially I didn't know how I could do it. So that pushed me to figure out how to do this. So I made a call to Jimmy's 4x4. And of course, what's the first thing you do when you call Jimmy's 4x4? You say, is Jimmy there? So of course, Randy Rod is Jimmy. And, of course, he never skips a beat. Yep. And
you got him.
Yep, you got him. And to this day, I still call him Jimmy Sims. It's, but anyway, so we spoke. He kind of Googled me, I guess, and searched me out a little bit. And, I just caught him at the right time where he was trying to grow his business, and things worked. So, he helped me with a roller chassis, so I got the buggy from him, brought it home. And of course, so they were doing XRA stuff, and they were, the Farmington and Moab and all that area. So there
was a lot of cars in that kind of era that were Jimmy's car. I mean, you had like Kim Sears had hers. Brian Shirley was in one. I believe like Mike McClure built one at one point. Did Rusty Bray have a Jimmy's car at one point?
No.
It seemed like there was a lot more than that, but then they multiplied.
They were getting magazine coverage. Back then he had the air graphics guy doing the airbrushing,
that's right,
on the cars. And so they had this, this different look, and, so they really stood out. And that's, it was just something new, and the tubing was just different. The cars looked, just mean, like they're just sitting there, just, ready to rip. And
he was cranking them out of the back side of the back garage, the back shop out of his dad's transmission shop there in Cortez.
Yep.
Now look where Randy is. He's got that really nice, setup out there, kind of northwest of Cortez, out beautiful view, no matter which way you look, 360 degrees, beautiful view from the shop versus the old shop being on like right on their main drag with a couple containers, shipping containers out back that he'd stash buggies in.
Yep.
Come on. And you know what? It really wasn't that many years ago. That was 10 years ago. 8-9 years ago.
Yep.
I don't know how long they've been in the new building, but it seems like a long time. But then when I think about it, I remember stopping at the old shop in 2010 or 2011, somewhere in there. Anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I was just out there, November, I guess, of last year, for this new car that I just built, and they had a parade in town, and I walked over and I walked by that old shop, and thought about the memories that I've had there and the time that I spent in that shop, and it's still there. It looks the same.
Oh yeah, I bet. Right. Yeah, man. So, Randy and you guys have worked together for so many years. I mean, that's like having a conversation with like Lauren Healy about Randy, or having a conversation with like Nick Nelson about Randy. It seems like you guys that end up in a Jimmy's car at one point, they're always in one for life. Like that's how the customer service, the Jimmy's, well, let's talk about joining the Jimmy's Army. I mean, you end up access to Ready Built Race program, Ready Built Race support right from day one when you sign the dotted line to have one built. Fair?
Absolutely. As part of, what I do with Randy and how Randy's helped me through the years. So they developed the Jimmy's Army. And so I always felt that I was part of, somebody that should help facilitate that. So I would always try to go out of my way to guys that were part of the Jimmy's Army to, hey, if you need something, especially these guys who go out and they're new, they bought a car, and I'm here, I want to help. They're helping Jimmy's, who's helping me. And, so it was kind of this big team thing. And yeah, that was fun to be a part of.
And then they always, Randy always gets like that extra big tent, or used to. Yeah, definitely. That extra big tent out at KOH, where it's like 10 teams racing out of the big tent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was, I want to say there was even more than 10 teams in there at a time. I mean, it was crazy. The first time you got that thing, so this huge tent, and it's heated, air conditioned. That was nuts.
Yeah.
But, it made a statement.
When I first met you, you were a BFG guy, but Randy converted you. For those that don't know, because I didn't know this until, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, but Randy Rod was the guy who really ended up with Nitto and introducing Nitto to rock sports, and then pushing the Nitto brand in rock sports. And then, we know where it is today and how heavily involved they are in ULTRA4. But that was the connection, how you ended up being a Nitto driver.
It is, so without Randy and Jimmy's, I definitely wouldn't have had that relationship. So that spawned for me based off of that. But Randy had basically hounded and stayed on top of the Nitto guy for 2 or 3 years before ever getting, Nitto to come over and come on board and start getting involved. So I don't know that they'd ever been involved in our sport at all without him.
Yeah, I believe that. I think that's a fair statement. I think that's as I like to say, an inflection point for off-road motorsports. Inflection point right there was Randy staying on Nitto and getting them to the table, because that's really changed. That's allowed KOH to grow, allowed a lot of guys to build a race that weren't able to really race before. BFG was pulling back their program, and Nitto stepped in at just the right time to put tires on. I mean, putting race tires on off-road race cars, it's an expensive business. That's a very large chunk of your budget goes to tires. And when you can get those guys, our tire manufacturers involved in supporting the racers on that level, it all of a sudden makes racing doesn't make economic sense. I don't want to say that, but I will say it makes it more palatable, maybe.
Yeah, and the timing couldn't have been more perfect. So, like you're saying, I had been on BFG for years leading up to that, and that was about the time they were pulling out. And so Nitto came in and filled the void. And if they hadn't, I'd probably been done long ago. Yeah,
right. So KOH happens, right? We're XRA in it. We're living it up. There's nothing cooler in the world than XRA. It's 7 minutes of racing, 6 weeks of shop time. Then this race happens out west. We all know about 2007. Did you go the 2008 race, or was 2009 your first year?
So 2009 was my first time.
And what a first time it was. Now, did you break down in Outer Limits? Is that where you had your first issue?
Well, sort of.
Okay. The way you say that, there must be more.
Well,
the desert kicked all of our asses. I mean,
if you can call water in your fuel broke down, then I was broke down.
There you go. That's right. And you filled up in California. Was that California gas?
Yeah, I did.
And that was back when we were still running.
I learned a hard lesson there. And I don't know what happened, but I got several hundred gallons there at California. And I assume I sucked some water in the tank somehow. And I don't know if it's just because the sheer volume that I was pumping at once, that water sucked over into it. I don't know. Some of my guys wondered if somebody didn't put water in our fuel tanks, at night or something, but I never felt it was that, but I don't know. So, we went to the first pit, which, at the time I had a 10-gallon fuel cell, I think, because that was my XRA WeRock car. So, I didn't have any gas and was doing great, got gas, took off, started having problems and wouldn't run. And I checked all kinds of stuff. I think changed computers, tested all this stuff, and finally figured out there was gas, and that was a day later that I got that figured out.
So that day, we had an electrical gremlin that hit us pretty early on. It kept killing my fans. And then we spent some time in the main pit. But then when we got back out on course, I remember coming around these rocks in Outer Limits and seeing you and saying to Kelly Kaiser, holy crap, that's Derek. Derek's sitting. Like, we knew that you were having a bad day if we were going to be passing you. And yeah, man, that's terrible. But you came back in 2010, a year later, and you were nearly a new king. You nearly had it. It was you, Lauren, and was that Easy Rick Mooneyham, or was it Brad Lovell?
Yep. So Easy Rick was the first physical finisher, but he was fourth. It was Lauren, Brad Lovell, me, and then Easy Rick that year.
And y'all came, when I say you guys came in bumper to bumper, you guys were nose to tail across the finish line within 20 feet of each other as you guys motored in. It was a race right to the finish.
Yeah, it was close.
And out of that, what did you end up finishing there? You got third?
I got third, yep.
Third. But there were some lessons learned there, and this is some lessons that have actually been coming up a lot lately. And Will Gentile brought this up on social media, and it's what is the race course? At the Hammers, what is the race course? Is it the 50 foot of center line, or is it staying in the rocks when you're in the canyons? And what is the spirit of the course? What is the spirit of the rule? I believe in 2010, maybe we were naive. We believe the spirit of the race course was when you're in the canyons, you're running the rocks, you're running the obstacles. Fair?
Right. So that's a hard thing to figure out.
And today it's not that. It's really not that. It's you're going to take the burned-in course, even if the burned-in course is above and bifurcating around an obstacle. Full bypass.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. No question. If there is a faster line that does not have rocks in it, I want that one.
So how do you feel about that?
I don't have a problem with it at all. Racing is racing. And as long as we all know it's not a problem. So in 2010, I was very green. So there's a couple things. I didn't know the courses at all. Dave Cole, of ULTRA4 had a driver's meeting and said, I will have people in the rocks, you stay in the rocks. And if you get out of the rocks, I'm going to have them write your number down and you're going to get, whatever the penalty was. And I think that was maybe before they had maybe done this, 50-foot rule but anyway, I wasn't familiar with it. I didn't know it. And, there was times where we would get on the burned in course that I would take now, so there's kind of like a sand road right beside the rocks. In a lot of places. And, I see somebody sitting on the side of the hill and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's one of those people watching, isn't it? And so we backed up and got back in the rocks and drove the rocks. Now I know that is not what you do. Unless, this past year they had a meeting and there were some virtual checkpoints that you had to hit in the rocks and they told you exactly where it was. And, it was straight. I knew what to do. I knew where I had to be in the rocks and I knew where I could be out of the rocks. He even told us it was, I think it was at Spooners. No, it's not Spooners. It was maybe it's Outer Limits. Anyway, there's this huge bypass that people were taking the last few years. And I had never been on it until this year because they said, that's okay. You can do it the second lap, but not the third. You have to go around it. So if a person knows that, then it's all equal. But it just has to be spelled out, exactly what it is, and then it's fair.
So do you think the race needs to be longer then?
No, I think it's plenty long. there's the bypasses, so if you take all the bypasses, your time it's not like hours or anything, but it's faster, so you can potentially pick up, 15, 20 minutes by these little bypasses here and there.
And that's exactly what I was driving at. People that have made a big deal out of the bypasses versus not the bypasses versus stay on the rocks. I don't think it's a real time issue. And like you said, there you go. From you, your opinion is maybe 20 minutes. I don't think it's a time issue.
Yeah. And a lot of it's not even hard, difficult stuff. It's just, you're going to gain 30 seconds right here. And so you take that. And, if the next guy can too, then, that's fine, in my opinion.
What do you think the impact to the car is over, say, that 20 minutes that you're saving? Do you think the impact to the car itself is saving the car, or do you think it's just nuisance rocks that weren't going to be a problem?
Well, some of it's nuisance and some of it's maybe a little different. So there's a couple places where there's, what I'd call some pinch rocks. So it gets real tight. So, a narrower car can just drive right through it. But some of the wider guys, especially some of the IFS cars that have gotten wide, it's potentially a problem for them. So if they go into it too fast, you cut a tire, do something, or, you get stuck in it, bind up a little bit. So, there's certainly probably some areas where you could bypass and save fatigue on the car. So it's a little bit of both, but we've all got the opportunities, so I can bypass it and so can the next guy.
Right. So,
again, as long as it's fair for everybody, it's, I don't know that matters. If you want to do all the stuff, all they have to do is mandate it. I think the problem becomes policing it. And so I think that's where they came out this year and said, these are virtual checkpoints. You have to be here. The rest is fair game because we can't police it.
I agree with you. I wasn't trying to put you on the spot, Derek, when it comes to the competition side of it. But at the same time, there's a lot of people that have things to say or opinions to say about it. And I kind of want to spread the wealth of knowledge on that. Like, what is the true impact from the eyes of the competitor, from the mind of the competitor that's having to do with that? And I fully agree with you. Make the rules the same for Derek as it is for Racers 1 through Racer 100. The same rules, you follow the same portion of course, whatever, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. I like the when we talk about it from an endurance level, the races continue. King of the Hammers has continued to grow and got longer and longer and longer. And when I look at it getting longer and longer and longer, is it getting longer because it's getting easier, or is it getting longer to make it harder? And it feels like it's getting longer because it's gotten easier. And so it is a ways to an end, right? The end being, when you send the cars out at 8 a.m., you don't want your winner to come back at noon. You want them to come back at 2 or 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And the way to accomplish that is, if they're taking bypasses, if they're speeding up in that portion of the course, then we need to make the course longer to get them to return then. Because who's going to want to brag about, being a winner over a 4-hour race? No, but it's when your bragging right is, we're the toughest, hardest one-day hardcore race in the world, but your winners come back in 4 hours. You can't have that, right?
Yeah. And so how long was the course this year?
200 and something, 240, 245.
So I'm thinking it's one of the longer ones, or possibly the longest. Yeah. Is this year the longest?
I think so. So maybe 3 years ago, but.
So this year's course I thought was super easy, not difficult. And I don't know if it was the course, the course changes a little bit, or is it me as a driver getting more used to these big rocks and how to negotiate them, the vehicles being able to take it more so you can go over, the faster terrain, or the terrain faster, But this year, as far as that difficulty, I didn't find myself getting stuck a lot, or that something was, just didn't seem difficult for some reason. And I noticed Randy Slauson made that exact same comment, and I thought, I'd agree with him. Well,
that's certainly been floated. The same thing that we've said about, about technology and technology advances. The technology that's advanced in ULTRA4 off-road 4400 endurance off-road racing has jumped light years in the last 10 years. So the cars that we were racing in 2007, 2008, and 2009 versus what we can race today, yeah, you can cover a lot more ground, a lot more comfortably, and they're surviving. The survival rate of that vehicle is substantially more reliable.
It is. So I still struggle with the reliability some, I think. This year I was just plagued with problems, which, is maybe just new car stuff or just, I don't know. That's the tough thing. A guy can win a race every time if he can just keep his car together, right?
Yeah, you get to the finish line, right? What is it? To win, you must first finish. Yeah, right?
Every racer's story starts with, well, I was winning until...
Absolutely.
Stay tuned. Your talent tank isn't full yet.
Do you know what the entire 2020 ULTRA4 Racing 4400 class King of the Hammers podium had in common? Brannick Motorsports Custom Machine. This small family-owned machine shop in Fort Wayne, Indiana, has been advancing off-road technology since 2003 by proud veteran owner Stan Haynes and his son Brandon, and a talent-heavy staff committed to pushing the motorsports performance envelope. If those names sound familiar, they should. Stan and Brandon have been off-road racers since before King of the Hammers was a thing, and both are pillars of Team Indiana. I'm always talking here on the Talent Tank about supporting those that support you. I'm struggling to think of a sanctioning body that Brannick hasn't supported in rock sports. ULTRA4, We Rock, Pro Rock, just off the top of my head. And I support these guys myself. My current daily driven pre-runner Chevy has numerous one-off custom pieces on it, from rear axle flanges to custom 5/8" lug nuts. I sent the crew at Brannick my ideas, and they made them a reality. Between the Brannick lines of forged 4340 axle shafts all the way to their custom billet 300M shafts, Brannick has you covered with pretty much any custom axle shaft, any spline with no size or length restrictions. Need a rare oddball shaft for your Unimog? They have those as well. Sway bars, a large inventory of rod ends, big and small, their amazing specialized lightweight racing brakes, and unit bearings in numerous bolt patterns, onto their line of custom carrier bearings and U-joints in 1480 and 1550 flavors. And I about missed mentioning their amazing milled out aluminum suspension components, 70-75 billet aluminum links and trailering arms. If you haven't seen these, you're missing out on some very aesthetically pleasing pieces of hardware. Brannick prides themselves on quality, service, and value, proudly making parts that wear the Made in the USA moniker, no matter if it's for your daily driven Jeep, Toyota, Chevy pre-runner, or something more serious like your Rock Bouncer, ULTRA4, or trophy truck. You're covered with a call to Indiana. Did I mention I've met a land speed racing team that runs Brannick axles at over 300 miles an hour? Yeah. To ensure you eliminate your downtime while recreational wheeling this weekend, reduce your time in the shop turning wrenches on repairs, or looking to put your race car on the podium, call Stan and Brandon at Brannick, 260-467-1808, or on the web at brannickmotorsports.com. Brannick is a full-service machine shop that can handle everything from one-off to production runs. If they don't have it, they can make it.
Now, back to the show.
So you built a new car this year, but I want to jump back for a second and how you dealt with some serious adversity in your program. And tell me if this year is wrong, but I want to say it was 2011. You had a car burned down and you lost it.
2010.
It was 2010.
So 2010, this car was brand new, and I debuted it at the Hammers. So finished it on the lake bed and kind of buttoned it up really the night before the race. So I got third place at that race and lost by a minute and a half. So second place was 28 seconds ahead of me, and the first place was a minute and a half ahead, basically. And I had to stop, 3 different times. So I had a fuel injector rail come off on the trail. So I got up and was too anxious, I guess, because I stopped anyway. So I pinched an O-ring on the fuel injector rail, putting it back together. So I drove with gas leaking to a pit where Stan and the Brannick guys tried to fix it. Couldn't get it fixed. So I drove it all the way into main pit, still leaking gas, and we had to change the whole fuel injector out. That was probably my race to win if I was looking out over all the years. And so that was the tough one for me. But so then moving forward, I let Rusty Bray borrow that car to go do an E-Course race, which was a qualifier for King of the Hammers. And so the car caught fire while he had it. I don't know what happened. I had those issues earlier in the year with some of those fuel injector O-ring problems. I don't think it was related to that. I think what had happened was the pressure regulator was threaded into the fuel rail. So some of the cheap fuel rails have a pipe fitting on them. It's what they use for a seal instead of an O-ring boss.
Gotcha.
But anyway, so that fuel pressure regulator was right there, and I think it had just vibrated loose. Plus, that thing's under pressure because it's a pipe seal, so it's pressure thread seal, and I think it cracked there, which sprayed fuel, which got on the manifold, which started the fire.
And you're not putting that thing out.
Yep.
How did you handle that? How did you bounce back from that? I mean, that takes the wind from the sails.
Oh, it did, but it didn't. So at that point. And if you'd watched the Michael Jordan show, you'd understand this. So at that point, I was almost relieved that I got a break, because it was just, all this going and trying to figure this out, and, the money part of it, and just all of it, just all of it's a lot. It's just a lot all the time year round, and it's a job. And that gave me the first break that I'd had from this job in about 8 years. So, I mean, it sucked, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, my obligations for the rest of the year, I got a little bit of a breather and time to regroup. And Randy, I took the car back out to Jimmy's, and Randy bailed me out. He got me all fixed back up, and, we put something together again, and I was ready to go again for the next year.
You haven't missed a King of the Hammer since 2009.
I have not.
That's a pretty solid, stout standing just to be there every single year in February. We know where Derek West is. He's on the lake bed. So before we start talking about 2020 in your new car, I'm going to go into a couple things. Just, we talked about, earlier, like your KOH lessons learned, you take the easy line, all that. What's some advice you give for some new guys getting in that decide they want to get a new car? Let's say they end up calling Randy and they buy a car from Jimmy's, and what are some advice you give to those guys? Like GPS, like being lost, like pacing, the mental game. What's the stuff that works for Derek that Derek thinks about that's kind of like that base load of knowledge you need to be able to take the green flag out there?
Oh, that's a tough one because there's so much to it.
Oh, it's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, I feel like I can't help a new guy. I mean, there's just I don't even where am I going to start? And if I start talking, it's too much. So you've really got to go in and learn. And then as you start to understand, now ask me questions. How can I help? And how do you overcome this? Because, it's I can tell you something, how to fix a problem, but if you haven't ever had that problem, you're not going to remember it when you have the problem because it didn't make sense to you at the time, if that makes sense.
No, that is a very cool and interesting way to look at it. I hadn't thought about it from that angle, but I think you're spot on. We all learn different ways, but that's, I think you're right for some.
And I've had so many problems, and figured out the fix, and it's, mentally, I don't even know where to start. If I was trying to help you, so the biggest thing where I'm always short is, get some people, you need 10, 15 people out there helping you. That's the problem. I go out there and I've got 2 guys with me, and, I know enough people. I've been around long enough that I can find some people to help me. But, that's the thing is you get so spread out in all these pits in different places. And that's probably the one thing is get good help. Lots of people help you work in the pits, help you work on the car, surround yourself with a good crew.
And when we talk about like really good crew, it is, I've heard this. I'm going to use Lauren as an example. Lauren has, Lauren's at the top of the game. He has trouble keeping people, at races. The Campbells, same way. It'll just be the family at events. No one's ever going to turn down help. But what I really find cool about off-road and ULTRA4 Racing is the teaming up. You certainly have other Jimmy's guys you can team up with, but you've teamed up with other teams, about splashing gas or this or that or parts or whatever. That's always been really cool. What I've really found really fascinating about racing in off-road endurance is the ease by which teams will pair up.
Yeah. And, so from the beginning since I've been involved with this, I've just always heard about how great our sport is, how willing we are to help each other in comparison to other motorsports, which I have not been involved with other motorsports. So to me, it's just you help people. And if it's your competitor, you help him, and he's going to owe you one, because at some point you're going to need help.
Right. All right. We're going to jump into, I'm going to hit two little things. So 2019, you have a new car in 2020, and that's where I want to kind of go into how your 2020 race went here. But 2019, you had a very successful 2019. You won at Davis at Crossbar, and then at AOP, were you on the pole there? But I don't actually remember how your race went. Is that right?
Yeah. So I got the pole, and I guess I'm going to have to think about how my race went.
That's funny.
I want to say we got third. Did we get third, second? I can't remember that one.
That's when you've raced for so long. They all kind of blend together. But congratulations on your win at Crossbar. I mean, you still have it. What made you decide to jump out of the old car and build a new one to be ready for this year's KOH? What was the catalyst?
Oh, it was just time. So I had kind of been starting on things and had inspiration to build this car the year before. And so I'd been working with Jimmy's again. And so this car has a leading arm, and there was just a lot of time involved in CAD and trying to get the correct window to get it built, and with between me and Randy and getting all my parts. And so the car actually came a year later than what I had originally anticipated.
Now, is this kind of set up this similar to like Cade's and like David Hartman's, with the engine pushed back and down a little bit, and you gain a whole bunch of up travel in the front? Is it similar design, or how dissimilar is it from those cars? So
it's the same chassis.
Okay.
So my chassis is what's called a 48P, which is, so it's basically for the 4800 class. So I guess technically I've got the first 4400P, because that's what I call mine. It's a 44P.
There you go.
But it's the same chassis as theirs. So my front leading arms are a little different, and I'm sure there's a handful of other different things. But yes, it's the same design. So when I first started talking with this car about it to Randy, I said, there's really two things that I want to change, that I want different about the car that I had, previous. I said I'd like to have more up travel. It seems like if I hit a real big G out or some sort of a large event in the front, it'll bottom out a little easier than what I want. And I want the ability to corner better. So the leading arm gives me more up travel. So it took care of that. And then they did a whole suspension geometry change, and I've got a car that corners better. So they nailed it.
That's excellent that you get out what you plan to get out, and what you set out to get out.
I mean, I think so. So I've only drove the car twice.
Well, yeah, but fair enough. All right. COVID's kind of screwed us here. So what went down at KOH with that car? Any issue shock tuning, or were you guys able to, I know like Cade and David Hartman on their 4800 cars, they were able to basically share their dope sheets for shock setups. Were you able to draw on any of that, or did you just have to go build it all straight out of the box and go put a bunch of tune time on? Yeah.
So I've got dual shocks, and they're single. So, different deal. I don't even know who they tune with. So I didn't have any part of that at all. So I work with Radflow for my shocks, and I have ever since I've been in my Jimmy's car. So, and I also work with Phil Liccardi. So Phil has a good relationship with Glenn, the owner of Radflow, and talked with him and kind of helped custom put the tubes dialed in for where he wanted. And then I went and tuned with Phil. But anyway, I mean, I'm blown away with how well this car does and the potential that it has. And the limiting factor of this car is me. So it's pretty absurd how I feel driving this car. So there would be a G out, and, they sneak up on you, and all of a sudden you see them and you're going faster than what you should be. And so your reaction is to tense up, which is terrible. It's the worst thing you can do. So I find myself, tensing up, going like this. And then I realized nothing happened, and the car just took it. And even so, I did the King of the Hammers, and then I did an Outlaw race, and the same thing. And I've got to learn how to drive the car faster. The car is faster than what I can drive it. I got to figure it out. So
I guess there's a reason why someone gave him the nickname Shock Jesus.
Yeah. So he's a great dude to work with, super straightforward and nice guy. And yeah, I mean, he knows his stuff, and I'm pretty happy. And of course, there's always more, so where am I at? Am I at 80% or 90% or 70%? I don't know. There's always more in a shock. I don't feel like you ever get to the best it can be.
And as you get more comfortable in the car and you push the car harder and faster, then the tune needs to change.
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. So 2020 KOH, brand new car, you've tuned it. What was the downside? What happened?
So I'll start with qualifying. So I had probably the worst qualifying I've ever had. And I felt like I did okay. It was a crazy thing. So after my run, I didn't feel like I sucked, but I didn't do very good. So I was like, what are these guys way faster, or was I not very good? The competition is getting better. It's all the time. It's better. So I don't even remember where I started, but I want to feel like I was 30th or something, which is a fine starting spot. Really, it's a perfect starting spot, but I've been as high as third, I think, at King of the Hammers before. And, and I win poles here and there. Not all the time, but, so I can be fast, but I wasn't there, and I didn't know what was going on there. Anyway, so we started off, and I didn't do a ton of pre-running. I pretty well ran the first lap, and that was about it. We were working on stuff nonstop. I don't even remember. It was just, new car stuff. And this race they have is smack dab in the middle of the off season. I feel like it's the worst time to ever have a race. You can't prepare for it. And of course, I'd probably say that no matter when they had it, but
no, that's right.
So, we're trying to figure out a new car there, and it's tough. You got problems to sneak up on you, and got to figure it out. And, we made it to race day and took off and did lap one, and, trying to figure out the car, like I said, how fast can I drive this thing? And it's like, man, I pushed it a little harder and it just takes it and just goes. And, I don't really know what the limit is. But we had a great first lap. So I started 30th.
Who was your co-driver this year?
David Fox.
David Fox. That's
David
what I
Fox,
thought.
Yeah.
He's a good dude.
Yeah, he's been my co-driver, for the past several years. And he's a perfect fit. He used to be a driver himself, so he's, still got an ULTRA4 car. And so he knows what it takes. He understands what it's like being in the driver's seat, and, knows what I'm going through, I think, and he's, it's worked out well.
Yeah. The mental game, right? All the mental game.
Yep. But so we came in lap one, 15th maybe. So I think we picked up 15 spots, probably a lot of it to attrition. But, I didn't really get passed by a lot of guys. I think I had 2 IFS cars pass me, which I didn't think was too bad for as long as the first lap was. So, but after that, we just started having problems, just little stuff. We had to pull over and fix it, and, rock getting into the brake line and just different stuff. It was just a tough race. And after a while, I just started getting wore out from getting out and working on it. And then finally just had a problem. That was it. That was done.
That was the time to throw in the towel. Yeah. We can talk about, the difference between, what happens between the green flag and the checker flag, but there's also what happens between the left ear and the right ear. That's, they're both 2 races, one's mechanical and one's totally mental, and mechanical took you out. But yeah, you're right. All those issues weigh in on that mental side of you. That's suboptimal. The one thing that I notice absolutely about Derek West out there and what you have going, Derek, and, certainly the Crush Motorsports and your wife trying to move your branding to the Derek West 20. And that's your Instagram is Derek West 20, is for years, though. This isn't a new thing. For years, your social media leveraging is so on point in front of people. You're really good about doing videos. You're really good about talking people through what you're going through that day or what you're going through that moment. Like simple stuff like, hey, here we are. King of the Hammers is going on next week. Here I'm in my shop in Missouri. The car's buttoned up. We got, new graphics on, new wrap. And then you roll up the garage door and you're like, and this is what we're dealing with. We're rolling out of here. This is, there's 3 inches of snow and there's ice everywhere. It's not much warmer in California, but we're going. Or when you go to in the Outlaw races and you'll walk the course and you'll video it and you'll load it to social media. You've been really, really good about that. Has anyone coached you on that, or has that just been mental marketing on your side, or has it been, what is it?
No, it's just showing what I do, so I've got an obligation. There's a lot of people that help me, and I want to, show here's what I'm out doing, and I'm using your product. And, then I started doing the videos. And I really like to do it when I'm at the rock bouncer events, because I feel like a lot of my following is ULTRA4 type of people. And, they know what I do and they know what happens there, but they've maybe never been to a rock bouncer event, and they've never seen, these cars in person possibly. So yeah, I just kind of started doing that. And I guess it's maybe easier for me to throw up a video and say, all right, let's do this 3, 2, 1, do a video. Otherwise it's some sort of photo and they got to come up with some catchy caption phrase of what's going on. And
yeah, no, there it is. I think that's it. I mean, I think that's the example. Well, I didn't know, but now that as you speak through it, yeah, you're right. Probably video is much easier than having to go put commentary and build content and everything around it. Yeah, you've been doing a really good job. I don't know if anyone's told you that, but your social media has always been really on point. And Shannon Welch asked a few weeks ago during COVID about what drivers' content during this has impressed people. And there was one that jumped out to me, and I was the one I blurted out on social media, was the ULTRA4 Racing accounts, the Facebook and the Instagram. They really have been cranking out good stuff. But you as well. You have had just consistent, really cool, good stuff. And thank you. I mean, that's helps pass time, helps, but also you do a lot of stuff that's very informative, not necessarily how-tos, but like off-road racing, Derek West at this event, 411. I think you're killing it.
Yeah. And, I think I could be a whole lot better at it, but, to be honest, I don't like talking on the camera a bunch. And, so I have to force myself to do that. I don't know who likes to do that specifically. I know some people do, but it's just, that's part of my job. I'm a sponsored driver and I need to show what I'm doing. And I know there's people out there that follow. The funny thing is I make those videos and I don't get a whole lot of comments, but it's amazing the people that I see in person, people that I know, and they're like, hey, I really like it when you're at these events. And so that's what kept me doing it and started making me do it more, was the in-person one-on-ones where they tell me that they watch those videos and they like it and, keep doing it. They can watch what I'm doing. And so it's like, okay, I guess people like this.
Yeah, I like them.
Try not to feel like I'm out tooting my horn or.
No, I think you're just being genuine.
Whatever.
I think you're being you and genuine. I don't think it's anything. Well, I don't think it's anything more than that, but I think they're really good. Just genuine. Hey, here's what's up and here's what's going on at this event and here's where I am right now, and follow along. I mean, that's a lot of what the spectator side is, and is the living vicariously through your exploits with your visor down, right?
Right.
So we've definitely talked about endurance racing, and we kind of brought up a little bit of outlaw stuff, the rock bouncing stuff, but Race to Riches, 2 of the last 3 years at that, I'm going to call that a rock bouncer event. Is that a fair thing to call that? It's kind of everything, but I'm going to call it a rock bouncer event. You've won that thing.
Oh, it's full on rock bouncer event.
Yeah. I feel like there's this negative connotation between rock bouncers and like hillbillies or something. And I don't want to connect that. So I'm always kind of leery about what to call a rock bouncer event or what not. I don't want people to think like, I have some stereotype against them. I love Timmy Cameron. Tim Cameron's awesome. I love all the work that Cole Shirley does and puts in. When James Cantrell took his ULTRA4 car and did some rock bouncing, I thought that was pretty awesome. I think Miller had some success down there. He went to a couple of events. I don't know what events they were, but I remember Easy Rick actually doing one, him liking it. But you, and I get it, you're in southern Missouri, shorter drives than going to the East Coast to an off-road event out there, and you're having a lot of success in your 4400 car rock bouncing. Killing it. Have you been well received? I
think it's getting better. So, that's the problem with me doing it for a long time and having a lot of sponsors. So when I first started doing it, I think they think I'm from California or something and coming out here, and somebody else works on my car and I just get in and drive it. And, it's not the same feel as like what XRA was. We all meet each other. But it's, I've been around long enough now. I feel like things are better. But yeah, I mean, they're like XRA courses. Sometimes they get pretty extreme. But other than that, it's a woods racing course with, some technical stuff in it. And I'm good at that. It's not, so it's not even like I just showed up and it's my first time. I mean, that's what I started doing, so I enjoy it. I love it.
Fully in your wheelhouse, completely there.
It is. So, and their competition is getting better. So over the past few years that I've been doing this, I'm watching those guys get better and better and faster.
Well, that was funny talking to Josh Blyler about this at one point, where Miller had showed up to a Line Mountain race and, tuned shocks and all that. And then Blyler and his dad, they just banging it out on whatever the shock was that came out of the box, how it was. And they hadn't tuned anything. And that they saw how his car handled. They went and talked to Eric. Hey, how do you make your car, handle so good? And Eric's like, it's the shock tune. Well, we've seen the bouncers, they have started to tune for certain things, and some of that ULTRA4 technology that we've seen trickle down to trophy trucks is trickling down to the rock bouncers.
Yeah. So, I mean, look at, who we were just talking about, Phil Licardi. So he's made some trips out and tuned on these guys, and, so they work it out where they do tune sessions and get guys lined up, and he'll go out there and tune on them. And yeah, so they realized that shocks is where it's at, and you're trying to, it's just obstacles. You're trying to get over big rocks, and if you got a shock that'll absorb it, you can do it better.
Absolutely. So what's next for Derek? You've been a guy that's taken your car, a 4400 car. It can, in theory, can do everything. It can't do any single one thing great, but it can rock crawl. It can bounce at this point. Is there any other genres you've thought about showing up at, where it's not far drives? Is it take your car to an SCCA event? I mean, I don't know what it is. You've always been one of those guys that's always progressively looking at different ways to enjoy competition. What's next?
Yeah, I don't know. Especially this year, things are up in the air. So immediate next is, so I'm kind of going back down to where it all started, which is Bird's Adventure Center in Cass, Arkansas. So that's where I'm going for Memorial Day weekend, just to relax and enjoy it and
trail ride.
And and do some trail riding. So
let London rip it on a side by side.
Yep. No, other than that, I needed to start taking a look at the schedules. So Crandon, it's got an ULTRA4 race there. So I've raced there a couple times, so I'm thinking pretty hard about doing that one. That's not a sanctioned event, I guess, part of the season. It's just kind of a standalone deal.
Yeah, I'd heard a rumor that they were talking about Crandon still happening, but without crowds. I'd heard they were talking about doing it without crowds. That seems, well, I guess that would be just like a normal off-road race, but still. I can't imagine Crandon without crowds. But
so, looking this year, what I need to do is, put my head down, put the work in, get my car right, and show up to the races that I'm good at. Some of the rock bouncing events. You talked about the race getting moved to Oklahoma, Crossbar. Be ready for that stuff. And I've got a car that's, extremely capable. I mean, it's just, man, the thing's just killer. And I just need to get it dialed in and me get dialed in with it and, see what I can do, see if I can win some stuff.
I have no doubt on that one. Derek, I tell you what, thank you again for accepting my invite to be on the Talent Tank, sit down and tell your story. Did I do you justice? Were we able to cover everything you wanted to cover? Anything left lingering out there, low-hanging fruit that I missed?
No, I guess the only thing would be my number.
Yeah, so we did. You dropped that in there. There's a story about your number 20. What is it?
So when I first started racing, I was number 20. So my Orange Crush Jeep was number 20. So when I was doing We Rock, they mandated that we have a 3-digit number. So I went to 200. So I just added a 0 onto it.
Okay.
And so I stayed 200 because that was my number. Well, then when we went to ULTRA4, they mandated you have a 4,400 number because of the Best in the Desert. So I was like, okay, I'll do 4,420. So everybody's like, hey, does that mean 4 for 420? Thinking I had some sort of innuendo going on there with 420. But no, so that was it. So when I built my last car, we were no longer needing the 4400 designation, so I went back to 20. So I'm just kind of back to where it started.
I love it. I love you circled back. I know that there's been guys that have all circled back to that, that have dropped the 4400. Well, one, it just became a fight there's only 99 of them, right? Nobody's going to have the first one. So you've got 4401 through 4499. I remember 4499 seemed like Jesse Haynes. That was his number. I'm sure there's some others in there that I can kind of remember, but there's just more cars than that. There's more cars and when it was only really needed for a Best in the Desert series. Yeah. I think it was smart when you started seeing guys go back and drop away from being, I guess, aligned with having to have a 4400 number, even though they're a 4400 class. Anyway, I digress. Thank you for coming on, man. That was awesome.
Yeah.
I had a good time with you.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
All right. On that note, we're out. I hope you guys really liked this episode. It was a really fun one to make, as usual. I really have to thank my my 3 partners on this. Custom Splice, those guys. If you need anything for off-road recovery or even on-road recovery or any projects, please hit Todd and his crew up at customsplice.com. Give them a call. Machining, oh my gosh. Branding Machines, Stan and Brandon, those guys over there in Fort Wayne, Indiana, they do it all. If they can't make it, I don't know who can. If you need it made, they will do it. Hit those guys up. They're a big supporter of the Talent Tank, and I value their involvement. And then last but not least, Magnitude Performance. Jason Yode and company, they're in Nacogdoches, Texas, and everything that they've done for the Talent Tank and getting behind and supporting this this venture and this project and everything. Give them a call for your suspension needs. These guys do magic with springs. And then the parent company, Mass Motorsports Engines, man, they have engines on lock, hand built, lots of horsepower. They're your guys. Thanks, guys. We'll catch you next week.
Thank you for listening and taking a dive into the Talent Tank. Please like and subscribe on Instagram @The Talent Tank or our website, thetalenttank.com.